First off, back to the basketball days. Give me a scouting report on a young Mike Lee in Division III college basketball.
Open gym All-American. I never played. I didn't really get much game time.
Good shooter or what?
I was okay at a lot of things. I could handle the basketball. We'll say that.
All right. Fair enough. You obviously ended up working with people that had a better game than just about anyone in the world. So my second question, as we round the bases here, what makes Steph Curry better than almost anyone in the history of the game beyond one of the sweetest, if not sweetest, shots ever?
His mindset that he's more than an athlete. I think that allows him to play with the joy, gratitude, creativity, and freedom that we see him play with. I think he's put in obviously a ton of work on the court. He's put in a lot of deliberate practice, but so have a lot of people. And I think he takes a lot of pressure off of himself and allows him to play with that level of flow and be in the zone more because he believes that he's more than a jersey. He's more than an athlete.
That's interesting because that's adding on to what I think everybody knows, the work ethic, the on and on and on, right? But that's, I think if I'm hearing it right, that's purpose. That's purpose beyond basketball. Yeah,
exactly. I think he finds value in the totality of his human experience as a husband, a father, an activist, an entrepreneur, right? He's got all these other things that he is placing his identity in. And I think going back to one of the things we talked about before, the whole mental health crisis with high performers, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, is that it's really hard when you are passionate about something to separate what you do from who you are. Somebody said once that it's really hard to separate the art from the artist. And so when you place your identity in your performance, in what you do, that means some days you're going to be good and some days you're not. And so when you step on the court, you're placing your identity on the line every single day. And that's a really tough place to operate from.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you can't be at 100% every day. Most of us are not. So then what? And how do you figure that out? And what else is your purpose? Third question, as we round the bases, I know you got to be loving life in Southern California, especially in the winters. What do you miss about Wisconsin and what don't you miss?
Oh, what do I miss about Wisconsin? I think some of the friendships that I had growing up, your lifelong friends, the people that you've known since 5, 6, 7 years old. I think that being able to be around them as we get into a different stage of life, and some of them are having kids and things like that. I miss some of that. What do I don't miss? I don't miss it when my parents call me 5 years ago and tell me that it's negative 56 degrees out with the wind chill. I am definitely not missing it then.
That was my expected answer, but yeah, what I expected you to answer. I don't know who misses that cold weather. I mean, some people they just I don't know. Like my first job up in Rhinelander, where my last full year of working there before I moved back to Madison, I think there were like 2 straight weeks where the high never got above 0 and there were over 100 inches of snow and the lake was still frozen in May. I don't miss any of that, but I know you can relate to it. All right, final question, the walk-off, because I want to go basketball theme here, even though I'm more of a baseball guy nowadays. Well, I think there's only one answer, but who's the greatest basketball player of all time?
Depends on the era. It's hard to answer because everybody's changed the game in their own way. Yeah. You can say Jordan when it was Jordan, Kobe when it was Kobe, Steph when it was Steph. I think it's hard to answer that, but I think the best that was the best in their era, I would have to say.
I think that's actually the right answer. I mean, who am I to judge? But because of when I grew up and where I grew up, it's not debatable. It's only Michael Jordan. But
right,
where I get upset is when people tell me, no, it's LeBron. No, it's Kobe. And it's usually somebody younger that never watched Jordan, which I guess now suddenly makes me feel old. But you know what? I don't know how you compare in baseball, say, Barry Bonds versus Mike Trout, or Mike Trout versus Babe Ruth, or whatever, right? Like, so I have always said in baseball too, like, you can't compare generations because the game is different. I think Michael Jordan would dominate today like he did back then, but everything's evolved, right? I mean, it's not the same game nowadays as it was back then. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And but I think that at least when we were growing up, and you're just a little bit younger than me, but maybe a little bit more than a little, but not much. I think that there was no debate at that time, right?
That's very.
It was Jordan, and anybody else that disagreed with that had been burned by Jordan and the Bulls or something like that. But it's a fun game to watch. It still is, and as long as the Stephs are out there and the LeBrons and the on and on and on. Well, I mean, right now I'm going off on a tangent. We'll wrap it up. But I don't know that we've ever seen anyone like Jokic before.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. I think, everybody's, kind of changed the game in their own way.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a great final answer too, because like the world changes, business changes, the way we go about things change. And I think that's an important thing as we see the mixing of generations in the workplace and all of that. I'll go deep on this one to wrap it up with a final thought, but I mean, the world's always going to change for better and worse.
Yeah. I mean, no question about it. It's something that came to mind when you were asking this question is, I look at the skill level of some of the players in the NBA right now, and you look at a game from 1970s, the skill level of the overall skill level is not even close, right? But it should be, right? If we are evolving, it should be. And so that's why we bring it back to the world and to business, right? That's why I think it's just so important to live in this internal game, right? The only thing that we can control is how we are showing up, how we are growing, right? When we get caught up in this comparison game, it's a slippery slope, right? Yeah. And I think it's good to know where you're at to evaluate yourself and get an objective perspective. But at the end of the day, like, you got to do the work. You got to be the one that is creating your future, and that is irrelevant to everything else that's going around you.
Great final point. So much insight and wisdom here. If anyone wants to learn more about Mike, and we'll have it in the show notes, mindshiftLabs.com, and the book, the podcast, and the speaking business and the coaching and everything that comes with it. Mike, so glad that we were able to connect. Really appreciate you spending time on Rounded the Bases.
Thanks for having me on, man.